Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well and the week is treating you well so far. Bit of a different video this week. I wanted to share an internal training video that I made talking about the watch buyer journey. And when I recorded this, I was actually unwell, so you might have to turn your volume up a little bit when it cuts to that video. But I hope you enjoy it. And I just want to ask you again, if you do see value in this, if you like the video, if you own a watch brand, you're about to start a watch brand, and there's more that you want to know, then go ahead and hit like on the video, and please do consider subscribing as well. It really does help keep me motivated to post these every week. But I hope you enjoy it. Any questions, leave a comment down below, and I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye. Hello folks, I hope you're well. So today we're going to talk about understanding the watch buyer journey. Now, today we're essentially going to talk about how buyers move from first contact to hopefully purchasing from your brand and owning one of your watches. Now, understanding this process and the way that buyers move is absolutely essential, because every single marketing system that we're going to build later on relies on how your buyers behave, not how you want them to behave. Okay, and that is really, really important. So we're going to jump straight into it, and we're going to talk about how most watches are a considered purchase. Now, think about this. Even if a watch is $90, would you consider that a considered purchase, or something that requires thinking before buying? Now, even if you say yes or no, the answer is always yes. And the reason for that is because people who want a new watch are going to be wearing it every day. Okay, so they need to really consider owning it. And that means that in most cases, someone isn't going to see an Instagram post and immediately order from you. Think about it. I mean, I had a friend recently, I get a lot of friends reach out to me and ask what I think of certain watches. And I had one message me earlier, I think on Monday this week, and asked me what I thought of a certain watch. And they sent me a link from a brand I'd never heard of that were selling watches for around £90, which is about $110, okay? They were still considering that. That was a considered purchase. They're still thinking about it. They've not ordered yet, and they discovered the brand through an ad probably 3 weeks ago. Okay, so you need to really think about that when you're doing your marketing, when you're setting everything up. It is a considered purchase. Now, this category, or this industry in general, is slow moving. Okay, you always research the watch you're going to buy, because again, you're going to wear it every day. You're always going to compare it to other colours, other dial variants, other bracelet types. Do you want a metal bracelet? Would you like a leather bracelet? And so on. So marketing has to reflect that journey. It needs to respect that buyer journey. I really do not like it when brands force people to buy. It doesn't make sense to me. Okay, so this is a chart of what we see as the buyer journey, and we use this internally. Now, you can see here we have first exposure, curiosity, information gathering, comparison, repetition, decision, and purchase. And we also have a loop back to repetition here. Okay, and this is what we use to essentially build out the marketing strategy for every brand. We want to know how things are timed, how long it takes for someone on average to discover the brand and then purchase. What do they need to help them do that? Okay, for example, believe it or not, and we don't like using discount marketing, but some brands overprice their watches massively, and they go through the entire funnel, and the last thing that might help someone buy is a 5 or 10% discount to bring the watch down a little bit. It depends brand to brand. Now, a lot of people say, do you not implement the same systems for every single brand? And that's somewhat true, yes. We use the same learnings and the same strategies, but every brand has a different email marketing system. Every brand has different paid advertising, because every customer acts differently. And no two brands are alike. They have different customers, different countries, different watches, different price points, okay? So everything is different, and we have to respect that and respect the buying cycle. Now, let's go through each stage on this map here, just to really help understand it, because this is going to be fundamental when we're building out marketing later on in the program. So we have first exposure. Now again, this is the first one here. It's step one. We're going to go along and down and straight to purchase, okay? So this is when, obviously, a buyer is going to see one of your watches. They might see it through an ad, they might see it through a social post, a review, or they might even see a friend wearing it, or at an event. You never know. It's how they discover your brand, or at least get turned on to the idea of your watches existing, okay? Now, as I have said, depending on price, which is a small caveat, 70 to 90% of people do not buy the minute they see an ad. Now, a lot of brand owners expect that. They expect to run ads and start getting people first purchasing immediately. Now, that can happen, and we do that. Like, there's enough people to make advertising in the top of funnel profitable to do that. But you need to understand that most of the money is made further down the line, okay? Now, if you're selling a watch that is $50, you're going to get more impulse buys, shall we say, than if your watch is $1,000. And that's really, really obvious. Now, after first exposure, most people do one of two things. They either ignore the brand or they click to learn more, right? Now, the goal here is to pique curiosity. It's not to get a sale. When you focus everything on getting a sale, you're going to fall flat. Because what we see brands doing is they'll think their ads aren't working, they'll change their advertising copy to have a discount for any new customers, and so on. And that is really, really desperate. Now, if you hadn't done that and you had been patient and marketed to the customer a little bit more, they would have purchased at full price a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the line. Okay? And it's important to understand that and respect it on a brand by brand basis. All right. Now, then we have curiosity. Now, once the buyer is aware of you, they begin a sort of light information search, so we say. So they visit your website, they'll skim the product page, they'll glance at a few images, right? But most people will quickly leave the curiosity point. And this is totally normal. This is where your retargeting, your email flows, your Advantage Plus advertising, which we'll get into later in the program, re-enters the picture to bring them back in. Now, if you think about curiosity, if you imagine scrolling something like Instagram Reels or TikTok, you choose which reel you're going to watch all the way through based on the curiosity that has been piqued in the first 3 to 5 seconds of that clip. However, if I asked you which Instagram Reels yesterday did you see and interested you the most, chances are most people are not even going to remember them. Okay, so think about it that way. Curiosity does not linger for long. You need to keep people in that funnel, all right? But curiosity is obviously super, super important after first contact because it allows them to learn more, and a certain percentage of people will click onto your website or click onto your Instagram page and follow you and so on, okay? But this is a very important step that's also extremely light touch and not very long lasting. This is where you kind of have to capture customers and try and get them back, all right? Then we have information gathering. Now, this is such an important stage for watch buyers, in our opinion. It's where those who are the most interested conduct further research. So people who are looking to potentially buy are going to really dive in and look at things like your specifications, so maybe case hardening and so on, your price point, any reviews you have. They will look on YouTube, they will look on Time and Tide and so on. The design of the watch, the movement that you've included. If they're really technical buyers, they might want to see how much the movement actually costs on AliExpress and see how much your markup is. That is a crazy way to do it, but people actually do that. The materials the watch is crafted from, the brand story, and so on. Now, at this stage, they are not choosing whether they want to buy and not buy. They're simply choosing between you and between other brands or other things in general. If you think about it, when you're going to buy something, you can think, do I really need this? Do I want this enough to spend the money? Or should I keep the money for a rainy day? Should I keep the money for another watch? Right? That is what's happening here. And you need to be able to convince customers that you are the obvious choice to spend their money with. Okay? Sorry guys, as you can probably tell, or you just heard, I had to pause the video there. I'm going to be completely honest, I've been a little bit unwell at the time of recording this. I've had to wait about 3 or 4 days just to record this lesson, and I am pushing on because obviously I want to get this done and get all these lessons out to you guys, but I've had a brief pause and we are good to go. So let's talk about the comparison phase. So this is where buyers, essentially, they've learned about the watch, they know about your brand, they're interested, and they want to compare it to other options out there, other market-ready or available options. So that could be other micro brands or watch brands, any watches at a similar price, watches with similar specifications, watches with similar design, and so on. The comparison phase, is where you see some people put posts in groups like the League of Micro Brands or Drinking Coffee and Talking Watches, and they say, what do you think about this watch? Or they will post and say, looking for a blue dial GMT, right? And it's because they usually have a watch in mind that they like and they're looking for other options. This is the comparison phase, okay? This is where most watch brands we've found lose customers because they only communicate from a single angle. It's only about us, about the watch. They don't go into the specifications and why the specifications are so great. They don't show enough reviews or social proof and so on. And that is why we see such a sort of cliff edge drop here in the comparison phase, right? So we then, let me move on, have repeated site visits. So most watch buyers after comparison or during comparison phase, and you will see this if you look at data in your Shopify account, for example, most watch buyers will return to your website or your social media pages multiple times. They will engage with you multiple times. They will learn about the watch and read the same things or watch the same reviews multiple times. Now, this is normal behavior for something where a watch is a considered purchase. Like, this isn't something to be worried about, but this is what happens. And these are the common patterns here that we have seen. So we'll see 3 to 10 site visits between the point of sort of discovery and purchase. So people will come back repeatedly to look at the watch, to maybe see if there's an offer and so on. Okay, there'll be 1 or more email sign-ups. We have seen people sign up with different emails. So they'll sign up twice to try and see if they can get a better discount because they think they can cheat an automated email system or so on. And they'll be back and forth between brands. So they will hop from you to another brand that they're considering. Which watch should I buy? Where should I spend my money? And so on. Okay, so your marketing system has to expect a delay between the customer visiting and making a purchase. Okay, they wait for something to come back in stock, wait for a new model, and so on. Now, this is where, if they're not 100% convinced on your watch, for example, but they really like the brand, they might wait on you to bring out a new release. And that's entirely possible. You will see customers that you gained from ads or so on only purchase a year or 2 years down the line. Okay, and then we have the decision. Now, this is when the buyers basically made their decision, they're going to buy your watch. Now, they will typically make that decision days before they actually buy. Because if you think about it, when you're going to spend $500, for example, or even $100, you will wait, you'll delay that gratification. That is natural human behavior. So they'll not buy immediately. Okay, the final purchase is the end of that very, very long process. Okay, it's not the result of just one ad or one email and then suddenly they buy a month later. It's because they've been indoctrinated, is the best word to use, into spending money with you and supporting your brand. So your role is to support that journey with information, reassurance, and consistency. Okay, now when people decide, when they're about to decide, when they are ready to buy, they will always want to come back and double check some details. So for example, they'll want to confirm the quality of your watches. So they'll look at reviews or Reddit threads and so on. The reliability, again, reviews, Reddit threads and so on. Legitimacy, long-term trust, whether the watch fits their life or collection. Now, legitimacy, we see people post in groups, ask, have you heard of this brand before? Does anyone trust this brand? And so on, okay? And they'll get feedback there, and then they'll make their final purchase. There's always, usually, one last snagging point before they finally purchase, okay? And all of these hesitations here map directly into the dial quadrant that we covered earlier in the program. So you can use the dial quadrant, as we've discussed, to target your marketing to all of those people. Okay, so here's a quick reminder just of the quadrant steps, just so you don't have to go back and look again. Hopefully you do remember and you got the downloadable poster and you're using that. However, we have utility, technical, prestige, lifestyle. So utility is trust, practicality, warranty, durability. Technical is the engineering, the accuracy, the raw materials going into the watch. Prestige is the ownership value, limited production, scarcity, and so on. Think Rolex, for example. Lifestyle is the design fit, the daily wear, the personal identity. Okay, so that is how the dial quadrant is essentially defined and fits into this system. Now, to actually take people through all of these steps here, you have to use the dial quadrant because you will be able to address all 4 points. If you think about the utility and technical, this is where you can give proof, you can show that your watch is the real deal, that it's worth its money, and so on. Okay. Now, one ad cannot cover every single motivation. Okay, one email cannot cover every single dial quadrant question that is raised from your marketing, right? Buyers need different messages at different stages. And this is why the system that we're going to be building uses Advantage Plus advertising for varied angles, which we'll cover in upcoming lessons, email flows for layered reinforcement, campaigns for momentum and engaging with customers or potential customers, and then retargeting as reminders to buy. Okay, so each touch point moves the buyer forward just a little bit more until they finally move into the decision phase. Okay, now many buyers, basically all of them, there will be a small percentage, but so many will not click the first ad, okay, the most loyal customers. But if you grab attention, they will remember your brand, okay? When they see the second ad, they will recognize the brand, and then they'll typically click or start making decisions or looking into you more on their third or fourth click, okay? Now this changes from brand to brand. Every brand has a different pattern. A lot of brands, for example, could get more customers on the first touch. It is harder to achieve that, but that does happen. Okay, then recognition is going to lead to curiosity. Curiosity will lead to research, and when they research, they will go to your website. Okay, so this is why creative variety in marketing, in advertising, is important. Not sending the same emails is really, really important, and we will cover all of this, obviously, in upcoming lessons. Then we have your email marketing. So email is not just for selling or sending pre-order updates. As I've said before, this really annoys me when brands think they're spamming people. They don't want to send many marketing emails. Email is for educating. It's for showing trust, letting customers know they can trust you, and supporting their decision along the way. It's for providing value and educating people. It is not for sending discounts or spamming them or only sending pre-order updates. It sounds, just strange to only send a marketing email when someone to people who haven't bought and tell them about a pre-order that they've missed out on. Okay, it's just absolutely bizarre. It's bad marketing. Now, the goal with email marketing is to provide clarity, to provide reassurance, to provide detail, to provide consistency, and to provide variety, which is really important as well. Now, emails create your brand perception far more than they drive immediate purchases. You will see new people discover the brand, but then maybe they'll go to checkout, a few weeks later, and you'll send them an automated abandoned checkout email, for example, and they will then immediately purchase. So it can happen there, but when you're actually using email like a proper watch brand to market and engage customers, it's not about just getting sales. It's about educating your customers and building that trust so that they do buy and they do trust you further down the line. So this is a sort of example, bullet pointed, of the buyer journey. So it's entirely possible, and this is different again for every single brand, okay? But they may see an ad, then visit the website, then leave the website. They might have signed up on the website and they'll then receive a browse abandonment flow. They might return to the website. They'll leave again. They'll see another ad. They'll return to the website again. They'll then compare the watch they've been browsing to another brand, another watch. They'll look at reviews and so on. They might then receive an email saying, hey, you were looking at this. Are you interested in learning more? And then they might finally purchase a couple of days later, or wait for you to bring out a new watch or a price drop or something like that. Okay, that is how the buyer journey typically works. Now, these are not set rules. This is just an example. Every brand is different. Okay. So one-off campaigns or email campaigns or marketing campaigns in general do not perform well when you're trying to build scalable monthly revenue. Okay. It's about considering the buyer journey. So systems will rely on volume, consistency, and repetition. The watch buying cycle that we've just gone through will reward brands that show up repeatedly and predictably across channels. It's all about consistency. That is the key word. Consistency and communication with your customers, no matter what stage of the buying cycle that they are at. Okay. Now, so many high-performing brands. Now, there is a few that we're all aware of, but so many high-performing brands do not rely on big launches to increase their revenue and grow year on year. Okay, it's a really, really, really risky business model, and you have to have a lot of hype and goodwill to be able to run a brand like that. It is not easy, okay? Most brands that want to scale month on month and grow their revenue by 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% every month are the brands that use marketing and communications every single day, okay? So just to summarize, watches are a slow considered purchase. Okay, there's multiple touch points, there's multiple motivations, there's repeated site visits, there is high comparison behavior. You're always going to be compared to another brand. There's a high need for reassurance. There's a strong reliance on email marketing and retargeting, and there's a high impact on the variety of the dial quadrant that you use in your marketing. Okay, so your entire marketing ecosystem is built around this pattern. You need to really provide value, engage, and communicate with customers. Okay, the too long didn't read is essentially always be marketing. Okay, it's about consistency and hitting customers where it matters to them. Now, that doesn't mean only sending an email to people who have viewed your website 3 times and then sending another email to any new people. It doesn't mean sending 10 emails for every touch point every week. Okay, it just means adding variety to your overall marketing strategy so that you have maybe 1 email a month that hits those first touch point people, 1 email a month that hits the utility focused buyers, or the prestige focused buyers, and so on. Okay, that is essentially the summary here. So I hope this makes sense. And again, let's just scroll back here and look at this chart so that you really understand it. We have first exposure, curiosity, information gathering, comparison, repetition, decision, and then a loop back to repetition. They could be in this death loop for a long time, and I actually have a great example of this, and then purchase. Now, interestingly, in my example here, we had one brand that we worked with recently. It was about a month ago now, I think, just over a month potentially. And they had a customer who purchased one of their new watches at a much higher price. And we were very curious as to where that customer came from, because we were tracking the success of the launch. So we were looking at, which YouTube reviews made how much revenue, and so on and so on. So we were tracking everything in a spreadsheet. And we had a customer that came in and purchased, and we found out that he actually subscribed to email marketing over 2 years before that point and had opened almost every single email and had never purchased until that watch launched. So it's entirely possible, and we have seen it happen, as I've just explained, that people are not going to purchase for even 2 years, and then they're going to come in and spend, £1,000 with you. So it's really important to engage and nurture those people throughout the journey. So hope this has been valuable. I will see you all in the next lesson.